The millionaire's daughter finds a child on the street, but when he sees her, he notices something shocking about the girl. Olivia took a deep breath as she gazed out at the city from her room on the 20th floor of New York's most luxurious building. At 18, she had everything anyone could desire: designer clothes, a closet the size of an apartment, and a credit card with no limit. Her father, Richard Montgomery, was one of the country's most successful businessmen, owner of a chain of private hospitals that expanded each year. "Olivia, are you ready yet? The driver is waiting to take you to the mall." The voice of Catherine, her stepmother, echoed down the hallway. Olivia adjusted her white Chanel dress and applied another coat of lip gloss. "I'm coming," she replied, grabbing her Hermes handbag. It was just another ordinary day in her perfectly organized life. If this story interests you, subscribe to the channel to receive all our exciting stories. Continuing. In the mirrored elevator, Olivia admired her reflection: light brown hair, perfectly styled, subtle makeup enhancing her honey-colored eyes. Everything in her life was meticulously planned, from childhood ballet lessons to the future medical school she would attend to follow in her father's footsteps. The driver was waiting with the Mercedes door open. "Good afternoon, Miss Olivia," he greeted formally. She responded with a polite smile and settled into the leather seat. The traffic was particularly chaotic that Friday afternoon. As the car inched slowly down Fifth Avenue, Olivia absently observed the people through the window. Hurried executives, street vendors, street performers, a world so different from hers, protected by bulletproof glass and high walls. That's when her cell phone rang. It was Amanda, her best friend, canceling their mall meeting. Olivia sighed, frustrated. "Peter, you can stop right here. I'll cross over to get a coffee," she decided impulsively, needing something to occupy her unexpected free time. The driver hesitated. "Miss, your father recommended that I accompany you." "There's no need. It's just a few meters. I'll be back." "In 15 minutes, she insisted, already opening the door. The hot city air immediately enveloped her, so different from the car's air conditioning. Olivia began to cross the street, distracted by a message on her phone. She didn't notice when the traffic light changed, nor did she hear the desperate honking. When she finally looked up, she only saw the headlights of a bus coming towards her. Time seemed to freeze. Her muscles locked up. That's when she felt a strong sideways push, and her body was thrown against the sidewalk. The impact was painful, but certainly less than it would have been if... Dazed, Olivia looked up at her savior, and then the world seemed to move in slow motion. The girl who had saved her wore tattered clothes and had disheveled hair, but her face... Olivia felt her heart skip a beat. It was like looking in a mirror. The same honey-colored eyes, the same face shape, even the small mole near the chin. "Are you okay?" the girl asked, her voice trembling slightly. Even the tone was identical. Olivia couldn't respond. Her father was already running towards her, having gotten out of the car in desperation upon seeing the scene. Richard Montgomery stopped abruptly when he saw the two girls side by side. His face paled as if he had seen a ghost. "It's not possible," he muttered, looking from his daughter to the stranger repeatedly. The street girl quickly stood up, as if intending to flee, but Olivia held her wrist. "Wait, what? What's your name?" The young woman hesitated, her eyes identical to Olivia's showing a mix of fear and curiosity. "My name is Lily," she finally answered, her low voice almost getting lost in the noise of the city. "Lily," Olivia repeated, feeling the name resonate in her chest like a distant memory she didn't know she possessed. How is this possible?" Richard Montgomery intervened, his normally firm voice now betraying his disturbance. Let's all get in the car. We need to talk." Lily took a step back, distrustful. "I don't need anything. I just wanted to help." "Please," Olivia pleaded, still holding the girl's wrist. You're identical to me. This can't be a coincidence." Lily looked at her own feet, clad in worn-out sneakers, and then at Olivia's. Designer shoes. They were so alike and so different at the same time. Finally, with a choked voice, she revealed, "I grew up in an orphanage. The only thing I know about my past is that I have a twin sister." The world seemed to go silent around them. Olivia felt her legs weaken, and her father had to support her. People rushed by, oblivious to the moment that would forever change the lives of those three people standing on the sidewalk of Fifth Avenue. How did you know?" Richard asked, his voice almost a whisper. Lily hugged herself, as if trying to protect herself. "One of the nuns at the orphanage told me when I turned 18. She said our mother couldn't raise both of us, but I never imagined I'd find my sister like this." Olivia felt tears running down her face, smudging her perfect makeup. 18 years living a life of privilege, while her twin sister, her other half, and lived on the streets. How was this possible? How had her father never told her about the existence of a sister? If this story interests you, subscribe to the channel to receive all our exciting stories. Continuing. Richard Montgomery's office occupied the entire top floor of one of the most imposing buildings on Wall Street. The glass walls offered a panoramic view of New York, but at that moment, no one was admiring the landscape. Lily was sitting uncomfortably in one of the leather armchairs, her worn-out sneakers contrasting with the Italian marble floor. Olivia couldn't stop looking at her sister. It was as if a mirror had come to life, reflecting not just her appearance, but an alternative version of her own existence. What would her life have been like if she had been the one to grow up on the streets? "Would you like some tea, water?" Richard offered, his voice betraying the nervousness he was trying to hide. Lily shook her head. "I just want to understand what's going on," she replied, her honey-colored eyes fixed on the businessman. "Did you know about me?" Richard loosened his tie as if it were choking him. He walked to the window, observing the city for a few moments, before turning back to the girls. "When we adopted Olivia, we were told she was an only child," he began, carefully choosing his words. "The process was conducted by a reputable agency. All the documents were in order." "So you didn't know?" Olivia asked, her voice trembling slightly. "No, sweetheart," Richard answered, running his hand through his graying hair. "If we had known, we would never have separated two sisters." Lily let out a bitter laugh. "Of course, because you're such kind people," she said ironically, standing up from the armchair. "Look, I don't want to cause trouble. I just saved someone from an accident as I would for anyone. I don't need anyone's pity." "Lily, wait!" Olivia stood up too, reaching her sister before she got to the door. "Please, don't go. We've just found each other." "Found each other?" Lily turned, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Olivia, look at us. You grew up in a palace, I grew up begging. You have everything, I have nothing. What kind of relationship do you think we could have?" Richard approached the two, his face heavy with guilt and concern. "Lily, let me help. I can offer an apartment, education, anything you need." "I don't need your money," Lily exploded, years of hurt and resentment overflowing in her words. "You think you can just throw money at me and erase 18 years of abandonment? I've been hungry, cold, humiliated, while my twin sister lived like a princess." Olivia felt tears running down her face. "Lily, please, it wasn't our fault. We didn't know." "Mr. Montgomery?" The secretary's voice interrupted through the intercom. "Mrs. Catherine is here." Richard paled. He hadn't planned to tell his wife about this situation so suddenly. But before he could respond, the office door opened. Catherine Montgomery entered, like a gust of wind, her designer dress rustling. She stopped abruptly upon seeing the two girls side by side, her blue eyes widening in shock. "Richard, what does this mean?" she asked, her voice faltering. "Mum," Olivia began, but Catherine raised her hand, silencing her. "Did you know about this?" she asked her husband, her tone sharp as ice. "Did you know there was another?" "Catherine, I can explain." Richard tried to intervene, but his wife already had her cell phone in hand. "I'm calling our lawyers immediately," she declared. "We need to verify if this isn't some kind of scam. How do we know this girl didn't plan all this?" "Scam?" Lily laughed humorlessly. "Do you really think I plan to be abandoned in an orphanage? That I chose to spend my entire life on the streets just to one day accidentally meet my rich sister?" "Mum, look at her," Olivia pleaded. "It's impossible to deny we're twins." Catherine took a deep breath, trying to maintain her composure. "That's precisely why we need to be careful. Richard, you've built an empire. We can't allow a stranger to appear out of nowhere and threaten everything we've achieved. Lily walked to the door, her hands trembling. Don't worry, Mrs. Montgomery. I don't want anything from your perfect family. I've spent my entire life alone. I can continue that way. Lily, no. Olivia ran after her sister, holding her arm. Please, I've just found you. I can't lose you again. The two looked at each other, the same pair of honey-colored eyes reflecting. Decades of separation, pain, and hope. Lily gently freed her arm from her sister's grip. Some broken things can't be fixed, Olivia, she murmured, before walking out the door, leaving behind a deafening silence. Richard sank into his chair, the weight of the situation crushing his shoulders. Olivia ran to the window, watching her newly discovered sister disappear into the crowd below. Catherine was already on the phone with her legal team. What none of them realized was that at that exact moment, a young reporter was photographing Lily leaving the building, his eyes shining with the certainty of having found the story that would change his career forever. Alex Mendez adjusted the collar of his dress shirt as he climbed the steps to the New York Daily newsroom. After 5 years as an investigative reporter, he finally had a story in his hands that would make a difference. The photos on his cell phone clearly showed the two identical young women. One, the well-known Montgomery heiress, the other, a complete stranger hurriedly leaving the billionaire's office. "Boss, I need to talk to you," he said, entering without knocking into the office of Robert Almeida, the newspaper's editor-in-chief. 15 minutes later, the entire newsroom was buzzing. Reporters were making calls, researching old records, scouring social media. The story needed to go to print the next day, before any other outlet discovered the scandal. Meanwhile, in the Montgomery's apartment, Olivia was lying on her king-size bed staring fixedly at the ceiling. The tears had dried, but the emptiness in her chest only grew. How could she return to her normal life knowing that her twin sister was somewhere in the city, possibly without a place to sleep? "Olivia?" Her father's voice sounded from the other side of the door. "Can I come in?" She didn't answer, but Richard entered anyway. He sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly looking older and more tired. "Sweetheart, I need you to understand. We're doing everything possible to find your sister," he began, his voice heavy. "I've already hired private investigators. We're going to help her, regardless of what your stepmother says." Olivia sat up abruptly. "Dad, how could you let Catherine speak that way? Lily is my sister. She's part of our family." "It's complicated, dear," Richard sighed. "Catherine is just trying to protect our family. There are people who—" "Protect us from what?" Olivia interrupted, exasperated. "From the truth. From knowing that while I had everything, my own sister had nothing. What kind of protection is that?" Before Richard could respond, Catherine burst into the room, her normally controlled face contorted with worry. "Richard, you need to see this," she said, extending her tablet. On the screen, a notification from the New York Daily flashed with a bombshell headline, "Montgomery Scandal, the Abandoned Twin." Below, photos of Olivia and Lily side by side, highlighting their striking resemblance. "This can't be happening," Catherine murmured, frantically scrolling through the article's comments. Hundreds of people were already expressing their outrage, questioning how one of the country's richest men could have abandoned one of the twins to her fate. Richard's phone started ringing incessantly. It was journalists, shareholders, members of the hospital board, all demanding explanations. "We need a press conference," Catherine decided, already typing messages to her PR team. "We have to control this narrative before—" "Control the narrative?" Olivia exploded, standing up. "Is that all that matters? The family's image? What about Lily? Where is she now? Who's looking for her?" Somewhere in the Bronx, Lily was looking at the same news on an old broken cell phone. Sitting on a park bench, she trembled, not from cold, but from fear of what was to come. Her entire life had been defined by anonymity, by invisibility. Now her face was in all the newspapers, next to the sister she had never known. "Lily?" a familiar voice called her. She looked up and found Sister Mary, the nun who had cared for her at the orphanage. "I saw the news. We need to talk." Sister Mary sat down next to Lily, her kind eyes full of concern. "There's something you need to know about your biological mother," she began, her voice trembling slightly. She never wanted to separate you and your sister." Lily felt her heart race. "What do you mean?" "Your mother, Hannah, was very young when you were born," Sister Mary continued. "She worked as a nurse at Montgomery Hospital. When she discovered she was pregnant with twins, she was forced to make an impossible choice." "What choice?" Lily asked, her voice barely audible. "Hannah is alive, Lily, and after seeing the news, she wants to meet you." The world seemed to spin around Lily. Her mother was alive. All this time. Before she could process the information, her cell phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. It was Olivia. "Please, meet me. Without our parents. Without the press. Just us two. We need to talk." Lily looked at the message, then at Sister Mary, her heart torn between the desire to meet her biological mother and the inexplicable connection she felt with the sister she had just found. At that moment, in the offices of the New York Daily, Alex Mendez was receiving information that would make the story even more complex. Old hospital documents suggested that the separation of the twins hadn't been just a matter of poverty, but part of a much larger scheme involving irregular adoptions in Montgomery hospitals. If this story interests you, subscribe to the channel to receive all our exciting stories. Continuing, Central Park was quiet that Sunday morning. Olivia arrived first, choosing a secluded bench near the lake. She had escaped from home without anyone noticing, leaving only a vague note about needing fresh air. The security guards hastily hired by her father to protect her from the press would go crazy when they discovered her absence. Dressed in simple jeans and a basic t-shirt, she was trying to go unnoticed. Her heart raced when she spotted Lily approaching. Her sister had also tried to disguise herself, wearing a hoodie despite the heat. "You came," Olivia whispered when Lily sat down beside her, maintaining a cautious distance. "I still don't know why," Lily replied, her eyes fixed on the lake. "But since yesterday, since I found out about our mother, I can't stop thinking about all this." Olivia turned to face her. "What is she like, our mother? Have you met her?" Lily shook her head. "Not yet. Sister Mary, the nun who took care of me at the orphanage, said she wants to meet us. But I'm afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Of discovering that I was abandoned on purpose, of knowing that she chose you and not me." Olivia felt tears forming. "Lily, I swear I didn't know. If I had known I had a sister—" "I know," Lily interrupted softly. "It's not your fault. But how do you think I feel? Seeing your perfect life in the newspapers, your travels, your room bigger than the entire orphanage where I grew up?" A heavy silence fell between them. In the distance, a family was walking with their twin children, the kids laughing and playing together. Olivia and Lily observed the scene, their hearts aching for the life they could have had. "When I was little," Olivia began hesitantly, "I always felt like something was missing, as if a part of me was lost. The doctors said it was anxiety, they prescribed me medication, but now—" "I felt it too," Lily confessed, her voice choked. "Especially at night. I had nightmares where someone was calling me, but I couldn't reach them." Olivia moved closer. "Lily, I found something that maybe you should see." She opened her bag and took out a yellowed envelope. "I managed to get this from my dad's office last night while everyone was asleep." Lily took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was an old photo, a young nurse holding 2 newborn babies. The smile on the woman's face was radiant, but her eyes carried a deep sadness. "It's her," Lily murmured. "Our mother." "Look at the date on the back," Olivia pointed. Lily turned the photo over. There was a note. "Hannah with the twins, 03/12/2006, last day." "Last day?" Lily asked, confused. "There's more." Olivia took some documents from the envelope. "These are old hospital records. Our mother, Hannah, was the head nurse of the maternity ward, until one day she simply disappeared. All her records were erased as if she had never existed." Lily frowned, processing the information. Sister Mary mentioned something about her being forced to make an impossible choice. But what could be so serious for a mother to abandon a child? I don't think she abandoned us, Olivia said softly. I think something much worse happened. Look at this. She showed another document, an incomplete handwritten letter. Dear Hannah, if you want to protect your daughters, you know what you need to do. One of them will have a life of privilege, the other will be sent for adoption. It's your choice. But if you try to report what you discovered about the adoptions at the hospital, I guarantee that neither of them... The letter ended there, torn. Lily felt a shiver run down her spine. It means our mother didn't abandon us, Olivia completed, her voice trembling. She was blackmailed. And I bet it has something to do with what that reporter is investigating about irregular adoptions in my father's hospitals. Lily stood up abruptly. We need to find her. Our mother. She's the only one who can explain all of this. Olivia also stood up, but before she could respond, her cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Catherine. Where are you? Do you have any idea of the scandal that's happening? Your father is having a panic attack. What is it? Lily asked, noticing the change in her sister's expression. Olivia showed the cell phone screen to Lily. A new headline had just been published. Exclusive. Ex-nurse reveals illegal adoption scheme at Montgomery hospitals. Hannah Sanders breaks decades of silence. The twins looked at each other, the same determination reflected in their identical eyes. Their mother had finally decided to speak, and nothing would be the same again. The conference room of the Montgomery Hospital's board had never felt so suffocating. Richard sat at the head of the oval table, surrounded by lawyers, press officers, and board members. On the state-of-the-art television, news stories followed one after another, each new headline like a nail in his professional coffin. The stocks have plummeted 30% since yesterday, informed Charles Mendez, the financial director, his voice tense. Investors are panicking. We need an official statement immediately. Catherine, seated next to her husband, was frantically typing on her tablet. I've already prepared a statement denying all accusations. We're going to sue the newspaper for defamation and... No, Richard interrupted, his voice surprisingly calm. Everyone in the room turned to him, shocked. We're not going to deny anything. Richard, have you lost your mind? Catherine hissed. This woman, this Hannah, is destroying everything we've built. No, Catherine, he replied, running his hands over his tired face. I destroyed everything. I knew. A sepulchral silence fell over the room. Catherine paled, her tablet slipping from her hands and hitting the table with a dull thud. What exactly did you know? She asked in a whisper. Richard stood up, walking to the window. The city continued its frantic pace below, oblivious to the drama unfolding in that room. When I took over the direction of the hospitals 20 years ago, I discovered irregularities in the adoption processes. Babies being directed to rich families, forged documents, poor mothers being coerced. He paused, his voice failing. Hannah was the head nurse of the maternity ward. She discovered everything and threatened to report it. And then? One of the lawyers encouraged, already foreseeing the legal disaster approaching. Then the former director, my father, gave her an ultimatum, Richard continued, tears streaming down his face. One of the twins would be adopted by a rich family, us, and the other would go to an orphanage. If she reported the scheme, she would lose both. My God, Catherine murmured, horrified. Why did you never tell me? Because I was a coward, Richard answered simply. When I took over the hospital, I promised myself I would end these practices, and I did. But the damage was already done. On the other side of the city, in a simple cafe in Brooklyn, Hannah Sanders nervously adjusted the coffee cup in front of her. Alex Mendez, the reporter, was recording every word, every bombshell revelation about the scheme that had separated dozens of families over the years. After they forced me to give up Lily, Hannah continued, her voice choked, I spent years trying to find her, but all the records had disappeared. It was as if she had never existed. And why did you decide to speak now? Alex asked, his eyes shining with the scoop of the century. Because I saw my daughters in the newspapers, Hannah replied, a sad smile on her lips. After so long, fate reunited them. I couldn't let the truth remain buried. Meanwhile, in a small apartment lent by Sister Mary, Lily and Olivia were absorbing the news in shock. The TV was on, showing old images of Montgomery Hospital, while experts debated the implications of the allegations. "How are you?" Lily asked, softly observing her sister who seemed lost in thought. Olivia wiped away a stubborn tear. "My father, the man I admired all my life. How could he? Sometimes the people we love disappoint us," Lily responded, surprising herself with her own maturity. Years on the streets had taught her a lot about human nature. Olivia's cell phone rang. It was Catherine again. She rejected the call. "I can't go back home," she decided. "Not now, not after this." Lily hesitated for a moment before holding her sister's hand. The touch, so similar to her own, conveyed an inexplicable comfort. "Stay here," she offered. "It's not a palace, but it's perfect," Olivia interrupted, squeezing her sister's hand. Lily's phone vibrated with a message from Sister Mary. "Hannah wants to meet you both, tonight." The twins looked at each other, decades of separation, pain, and longing for a mother they had never known, weighing on their hearts. "Together?" Olivia asked, her voice trembling. Lily nodded, a small smile appearing on her lips. "Together." In the Montgomery penthouse, Richard watched the city, an old photo in his hands. Him, much younger, holding baby Olivia. On the back, a note he had never noticed before. "Forgive me, little Lily. One day we will meet again." The small Italian restaurant in Little Italy was almost empty at that hour of the night. Sister Mary had chosen the location carefully. Discreet, cozy, and far from the eyes of the press that now pursued anyone related to the Montgomery case. In the most secluded corner, Hannah Sanders waited, her hands trembling so much she could barely hold the water glass in front of her. 18 years had passed since she was forced to make the most painful choice of her life. 18 years, waking up every morning thinking of her daughters, imagining their faces, their voices, their smiles. And now, finally, she would see the two together again. The doorbell chimed softly. Hannah looked up and her heart almost stopped. There they were, her girls, her twins, her little miracles that cruel fate had separated. Lily and Olivia entered hand in hand, as if afraid of losing each other again. "My daughters," Hannah whispered, standing up on shaky legs. Time seemed to freeze. The three women stared at each other. Decades of absence, questions, and longing, condensed into a single moment. It was Lily who took the first step forward. "Mom!" Her voice came out trembling, filled with emotion. Hannah couldn't contain herself. She crossed the distance between them in a few steps and enveloped them both, in a tight embrace. The scent of her daughters, the warmth of their bodies, the texture of their hair, all of this flooded her senses like an avalanche of long-repressed memories. "Forgive me," she sobbed, holding them close. "Forgive me for not being stronger, for not fighting harder." Olivia was also crying, her face buried in the shoulder of the mother she had never known. "There's nothing to forgive," she murmured through tears. Finally, they separated, sitting at the table. The waiter, discreetly moved by the scene, brought water for everyone and withdrew, leaving them alone. "You're even more beautiful than in my dreams," Hannah said, her eyes tracing every detail of her daughters' faces. "Every day I imagined what you would be like, if you would look alike. And look, you're identical." "What was our father like?" Lily asked suddenly. "Our biological father?" Hannah took a deep breath, preparing herself for another painful truth. "Your father was a wonderful man, a resident doctor at the hospital. How he discovered the adoption scheme before I did. He was gathering evidence to report it when..." "When what?" Olivia gently encouraged. "When he was suddenly transferred to a hospital abroad. I never saw him again. Later, I found out it was a maneuver by the hospital to silence him. He never knew I was pregnant with twins." Lily closed her eyes, processing the information. Another piece of the puzzle of her origin was falling into place. "Why didn't you run away?" Olivia asked. "Why didn't you take us far away?" Hannah took her daughter's hands on the table. Because they threatened me. Not just me, but you too. Richard's father was a powerful and unscrupulous man. He made it clear that if I didn't cooperate, something terrible could happen. So, I did the only thing I thought could protect you. You separated us, Lily completed, without accusation in her voice. Yes, Hannah confirmed, tears streaming. I knew the Montgomerys would give a comfortable life to one of you, and I prayed every day that the other would find a good family. When I found out Lily had gone to the orphanage, my heart shattered. You were watching us? Olivia asked, surprised. Hannah nodded. From afar, very far away, I saw you grow up through the newspapers, Olivia, at social events, in society, columns, and Lily. I visited the orphanage in secret, posing as a volunteer, just to see her, even if for a few minutes. Why didn't you try to contact us before? Lily questioned. Fear, Hannah admitted. The same fear that haunted me for 18 years. But when I saw you two together in the newspapers, when I saw that fate had done what I couldn't, I realized I couldn't hide anymore. The truth needed to come out. Olivia took something from her bag, the old photo she had found in her father's office. This photo, was it our last day together? Hannah took the photograph with trembling hands. Yes, I spent the whole night awake, holding you, memorizing every detail. The next day I had to give you up. Olivia's cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Catherine. Your father is in the hospital. He had a nervous breakdown. He needs you. Olivia showed the message to Lily, who nodded understandingly. Go, she said softly. He's still your father, regardless of everything. Hannah observed the exchange between the sisters, her heart swelling with pride at seeing the bond they had already developed in such a short time. Before you go, she said, taking an envelope from her purse, there's something you need to see. These are letters I wrote to both of you every year on your birthdays. I never had the courage to send them, but the twins took the envelope together, their hands touching in the process. At that moment, they were just 3 women, united by love, pain, and the hope of a future where they could finally be a true family. New York Presbyterian Hospital was in an uproar with Richard Montgomery's presence. Even as a patient, his influence was felt. An entire wing of the 6th floor had been isolated to ensure his privacy. Olivia walked through the sterile corridors, with Lily by her side. After everything they had shared at dinner with Hannah, her sister had refused to let her face this moment alone. Are you sure you want me to come in with you? Lily asked, stopping in front of the room door. Olivia squeezed her sister's hand. Absolutely. You're my family as much as he is. Inside the room, Richard was sitting on the bed, looking as if he had aged decades in just a few days. Catherine, who was by his side, stood up abruptly when she saw Lily. What is she doing here? She asked, her voice sharp. She's my sister, Olivia replied firmly, and she has as much right to be here as any of us. Richard raised his eyes, meeting those of the twins. You're right, he said, his voice hoarse. Lily, please stay. Catherine huffed, grabbing her purse. I'm going to get a coffee, she announced, leaving the room. A heavy silence settled in. Richard nervously fiddled with the hospital sheet, avoiding looking directly at his daughters. How was the meeting with Hannah? He finally asked. Why do you care? Olivia questioned more harshly than she intended. You were part of the system that separated us. Olivia, Lily murmured, squeezing her hand in warning. No, she's right, Richard interrupted. I deserved this breakdown. I deserved worse. I spent years living with the guilt, telling myself that at least I had saved one of you from poverty, that I had given Olivia a good home. But the truth is, I was a coward. Why did you never tell me about Lily? Olivia asked, tears streaming down her face. Why did you let me grow up without knowing I had a sister? Richard covered his face with his hands. Because every time I looked at you, I remembered the other baby I helped condemn to a life of deprivation. It was easier to pretend she didn't exist than to face what we had done. Lily, who had remained silent until then, took a step forward. You know what's ironic? During all these years on the streets, I envied people like you. Rich, powerful people who seem to have everything. But now I see that you're as much a prisoner as I've always been. Richard lowered his hands, revealing a face marked by tears. "You're wise beyond your years, Lily. Yes, I'm a prisoner of my own silence, of my own choices." "And now?" Olivia asked. "What happens now that the truth has come out?" "Now," Richard took a deep breath, "I do what I should have done 18 years ago. I'm going to tell everything to the police, about my father, about the adoption scheme, about every family that was separated." "This will destroy the hospitals," Olivia warned. "The entire empire you built." "To hell with the empire," Richard exclaimed with surprising force. "I've already lost more important things because of it. I lost my integrity. I lost the chance to see you two grow up together. I lost the right to consider myself a good man." At that moment, Catherine returned to the room, accompanied by a man in a suit whom Olivia recognized as Douglas Mendez, the hospital's chief lawyer. "Richard, no!" Catherine exclaimed, having obviously heard part of the conversation. "Think about the jobs, the people who depend on the hospitals. The hospitals will survive," Lily surprised everyone by speaking, "but they need to be cleaned up, rebuilt on honest foundations." Olivia looked at her sister with admiration. Even with all the reasons to desire revenge, Lily managed to see beyond anger and resentment. "She's right," Olivia agreed, "and we can help with this reconstruction. Together." Richard looked at his daughters, the one he had raised and the one he had abandoned, feeling a mixture of pride and regret that almost suffocated him. "You are extraordinary," he murmured. "So different and so alike at the same time." "Mr. Montgomery," Douglas intervened, "if you intend to make a confession, I need to remind you of your rights." "The only right that matters to me now," Richard interrupted, "is the right to do the right thing for the first time in my life." Catherine sank into an armchair, defeated. "And what about me? What about everything we built?" Olivia approached. Her stepmother. "You always taught me that appearances are important, that reputation is everything, but maybe it's time we learn that there are more valuable things." "Like family," Lily completed softly. "The real family, not the one we show in magazines." Richard extended his hands, one to each daughter. After a moment of hesitation, both held them. "I can't change the past," he said, "but I promise, from now on, to do everything differently." Outside the hospital, Hannah waited in the car, respecting the family's private moment. In her hands, an old photo, her still pregnant, young and hopeful, dreaming of her daughter's future. The future had taken a different path than she had imagined, but perhaps, just perhaps, there was still time to rewrite this story. The living room of the Montgomery mansion, once impeccable and cold as a museum, was now transformed. Empty pizza boxes shared space with scattered papers and half-empty coffee cups. Lily, sitting on the Persian rug, was furiously typing on a laptop while Olivia organized documents on the sofa. Hannah, seated in the Italian leather armchair, was reviewing old hospital files. "I found another one," Lily exclaimed, looking up from the screen. "Santos family, 2004, twins separated at birth." Olivia quickly made a note in her spreadsheet. "That makes 23 confirmed cases so far." Hannah felt her heart tighten. How many other families had been destroyed like hers? How many other mothers had cried over the loss of their children? "Girls," Catherine appeared in the doorway, looking out of place in her own home. "I brought more coffee." To everyone's surprise, including her own, Catherine had decided to help. Perhaps it was guilt, perhaps an attempt at redemption, or perhaps just the realization that her perfect family had always been built on lies. "Thank you, Catherine," Lily responded softly. The initial tension between them had given way to a respectful truce. Olivia's phone rang. It was Alex Mendez, the reporter who had uncovered everything. "3 more families have come forward after the latest report," he informed. "They're willing to testify about the irregular adoptions." "Great," Olivia replied, signaling for Lily to come closer to listen. "And what about the reconciliation process?" "The judge approved the mediation program," Alex confirmed. "Families who wish to can reunite in a controlled environment with psychological support." Lily smiled, remembering her own reunion experience. Chaotic, unexpected, but profoundly transformative. "Olivia, Lily," Hannah called, her voice trembling slightly. "I found something you need to see." The twins approached their mother, who was holding a medical file yellowed by time. "It's your father's record," she explained. "Daniel Alves. He's back in the United States." The silence that followed was deafening. Olivia was the first to find her voice. "Does he know about us?" "Not yet," Hannah replied. "But now that the whole story has come out, he will know. And knowing Daniel as I do, he'll want to meet us." Lily sat on the arm of Hannah's chair. "And you? Do you want to meet him?" Hannah smiled sadly. "Daniel was the love of my life. It was trying to protect me that he ended up being sent away. But now everything is different." "Do you still love him?" Olivia asked softly. "Some people leave marks on our souls that time doesn't erase," Hannah replied, caressing her daughter's hair. "But what matters is that he's your father. You deserve to know him if you want." Catherine, who had been observing the scene in silence, surprised everyone by saying, "We should invite him to dinner here at home." The other three women looked at her astonished. "What?" Catherine shrugged, a small smile on her lips. "If we're going to rebuild this family, let's do it right." At that moment, Richard entered the room, returning from another meeting with the lawyers. His face was tired, but there was a new serenity in his eyes, the serenity of someone who has finally freed themselves from an enormous weight. "How did it go?" Olivia asked, standing up to hug her father. "The district attorney accepted the deal," he informed. "I'll cooperate. With the investigations in exchange for an alternative sentence. The hospitals will be under temporary intervention, but they can continue operating." "And the employees?" Lily asked, surprising everyone with her concern. "No one will be fired," Richard assured, looking proudly at the daughter he barely knew, but who showed so much compassion. "In fact, I was thinking of creating a foundation." "What kind of foundation?" Hannah asked, interested. "A foundation to help separated families reunite, with legal, psychological, financial support, to try to repair somehow the harm we've done." Lily stood up, approaching her sister's adoptive father. After a moment of hesitation, she hugged him. "Thank you," she whispered. "Not for me, but for all the other Lilies and Olivias who will be able to find each other thanks to this." Richard returned the hug, silent tears running down his face. Olivia joined them, followed by Hannah. Even Catherine, after a moment of indecision, approached. The group. There in that room that once echoed only with superficial conversations and forced laughter, a true family was beginning to form. An imperfect family, full of scars and painful stories, but also full of love, forgiveness, and hope. The Ritz-Carlton restaurant sparkled under the soft light of crystal chandeliers. At a reserved table on the mezzanine, Lily nervously adjusted her new dress, a gift from Olivia that, after much insistence, she had finally accepted. Her sister, seated beside her, held her hand under the table. Hannah, elegant in a navy blue, ensemble checked her watch for the 10th time in 5 minutes. "He's late," she murmured, her voice betraying her anxiety. "Only 5 minutes, Mom," Olivia tried to reassure her. "The traffic is terrible today." Richard and Catherine had decided not to attend this first meeting, understanding that it was a special moment for Hannah and the twins to meet Daniel. Still, they had insisted on reserving the best restaurant in the city for the occasion. "What if he doesn't like me?" Lily whispered to Olivia. "Look at you, all elegant and successful, and I—" "And you are amazing," Olivia completed firmly. "You're strong, a survivor, compassionate. Our father will be proud of who you've become, just as I'm proud." Before Lily could respond, Hannah tensed. The twins followed her gaze and saw a tall man with graying hair and honey-colored eyes, the same eyes they had inherited, standing at the entrance to the mezzanine. Daniel Alves seemed as nervous as they were. His eyes scanned the environment until he found the table where they were seated. For a moment he was paralyzed, observing the 3 women that fate had taken from his life 18 years ago. "Hannah." His hoarse voice was barely audible as he slowly approached. "Daniel." Hannah stood up, trembling slightly. "These are My daughters, he completed, tears shining in his eyes. I know, I saw the news, the photos, but seeing them in person, his voice faltered. Olivia and Lily stood up in unison, a synchronized gesture that made Daniel smile through tears. You always did that, he commented. When you were babies. Before everything happened. If one cried, the other cried too. If one smiled, the other smiled too, Hannah completed, remembering. You used to say they had a special connection. And apparently they still do, Daniel observed, noticing the daughters' joined hands. The maître approached discreetly to serve water and hand out menus, giving the family a moment to compose themselves. Why did you never come back? Lily asked suddenly. After you left. Because they made me believe it was best for everyone, Daniel replied, his voice heavy with regret. Richard's father, Albert Montgomery, called me into his office one day. He said he had evidence that could destroy my career and Hannah's. He offered a position at a hospital in Toronto on the condition that I leave immediately and never try to make contact again. And you accepted? Olivia questioned, without accusation in her voice. I accepted because I thought I was protecting Hannah. He looked at his former love. I didn't know you were pregnant. If I had known, would it have changed anything? Hannah asked softly. Albert Montgomery was too powerful. He would have found another way to separate us. But now he can't separate us anymore, Lily stated. We're all here, Daniel smiled, studying his daughters' faces. Lily, your name is because of the full moon on the night Hannah told me she was in love with me. And Olivia, Hannah continued, was the name of my grandmother, who raised me alone after I lost my parents. I chose the names even before I knew you would be twins. They're perfect names, Daniel said, for two perfect women. He paused, gathering courage. I know I can't make up for 18 years of absence. I know you already have your lives, your family, but we can build something new, Olivia gently interrupted, something of our own. And you can start by telling us about that full moon story, Lily suggested, a small smile playing on her lips. Daniel laughed, the sound mixing with the tears now freely running down his face. Well, it was a summer night in 2005. As Daniel narrated the story of his romance with Hannah, the twins observed the glow in their mother's eyes, the shy smile that appeared on her lips, the small exchanges of glances that 18 years of separation had not managed to erase. Outside, the restaurant The City continued its frantic pace, but there, in that moment suspended in time, 4 people whom fate had separated began to rewrite their story. Not erasing the past, but building a future where all the parts of their broken hearts finally found their place. 6 months had passed since that night at the Ritz-Carlton. The garden of the Montgomery mansion, once impeccably organized in geometric patterns, now displayed a profusion of wildflowers, a change suggested by Lily, who always believed that true beauty lies in imperfection. It was Sunday and the aroma of barbecue filled the air. Daniel, wearing an apron with the words "World's Best Dad," a joint gift from his daughters, was competing with Richard for control of the grill. The two men, who initially could barely look at each other, now shared an unlikely friendship, built on the love they felt for Olivia and Lily. The secret is to let the meat rest, Daniel explained, while Richard watched attentively. In hospitals, I was always known for my precision, Richard joked, but I admit that when it comes to barbecuing, you're the expert. By the pool, Hannah and Catherine were setting the table for the family lunch, another concept that had changed drastically in recent months. The former First Lady of New York society now wore jeans and had her hair tied in an unpretentious ponytail. Who would have thought, Catherine commented, arranging the plates, that one day we'd be here, like this? Hannah smiled, understanding. Life has these surprises. Sometimes we need to lose everything we thought was important to find what really matters. On the lawn, Olivia and Lily were sitting on a spread-out blanket, surrounded by papers and laptops. The new Bonds Foundation, created by Richard and now directed by the twins, had already helped 15 families reunite. Look at this, Lily showed a photo on her phone to her sister. Marina found her twin brother yesterday. They cried for 2 hours straight. Olivia wiped away a discreet tear. Each reunion is special, isn't it? It reminds me of ours. Who Would have thought that that near accident would change our lives forever, Lily reflected, leaning back on her sister's shoulder. Alex Mendez, the reporter who had uncovered everything, approached with his inseparable notepad. He now worked part-time at the foundation, using his investigative talents to track down separated families. 3 more confirmed cases this week, he informed, sitting down with them. And you won't believe it, one of them involves triplets. Triplets? Olivia and Lily exclaimed in unison, making everyone around laugh at the synchronicity that never failed to surprise. Lunch is served, Daniel announced, bringing a steaming platter. Everyone gathered around the large outdoor table. Richard, in the host's place, cleared his throat to get attention. "Before we begin, I have an announcement to make," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "The hospital's administrative board unanimously approved. Starting next month, we'll have a new social assistance wing in all units. And it will be called the Hannah Alves Wing." Hannah covered her mouth with her hands, moved. Daniel gently squeezed her shoulder. "The wing will be dedicated to helping families in vulnerable situations," Richard continued, "so that no mother ever has to choose between her children due to financial issues. And there's more," Catherine added, surprising everyone. "We've decided to transform the old pediatric wing into a support center for family reunions, with all the necessary structure to welcome families during the reconciliation process." Lily, who rarely cried in public, couldn't hold back her tears. Olivia immediately hugged her, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. "I think I also have an announcement," Hannah said shyly, looking at Daniel. He nodded, encouraging her. "Daniel and I, well, we've decided to start over. We're getting married." The explosion of joy was instantaneous. Olivia and Lily jumped from their seats to hug their parents. Catherine was already making plans for the party, while Richard opened a bottle of champagne. "But there's one condition," Daniel added, smiling. "We want our daughters to be our bridesmaids." "As if you needed to ask," the twins responded together, provoking more laughter. The lunch proceeded amidst stories, laughter, and plans for the future. The garden, with its wild flowers dancing in the wind, seemed to celebrate along. On the table, dishes mixed, the sophisticated cuisine that Catherine adored alongside the rice and beans that Lily had learned to make in difficult times. As twilight fell, when the New York sky was tinged with pink and orange, the family, this new, complex and wonderful configuration of family, gathered for a photo. At the moment the flash went off, it captured much more than smiles. It recorded, living proof that love, when true, finds its way through any obstacle. Lily and Olivia, the twins that fate had separated and reunited, remained last in the garden, watching the stars begin to dot the sky. "You know what I remembered?" Lily commented. "That day in the park, when you showed me the old photo of Mom, pregnant. And now we have thousands of new photos," Olivia completed, "and thousands more to take." The sisters smiled, their identical eyes reflecting the same moon that had inspired Lily's name so many years ago. They were no longer the rich girl and the street girl. They were simply sisters, friends, partners in a journey that was just beginning. And so, under the starry sky of a city that had witnessed their separation and their reunion, 2 halves of the same story finally came together. It wasn't an ending, it was a new beginning. A beginning built on difficult truths, sincere forgiveness, and above all on the unconditional love that only a true family can offer.